Oh, what a night. Is that the way the song starts off? Oh, what a night. Something like that. Yeah, I got to get to you guys. It was a crazy news night. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening for those that's relevant. I got a ton of messages, thankfully from you guys, but also from a lot of people in my network. Uh, what I thought about 60 Minutes last night. For those of you who don't know, Benjamin Netanyahu had an extended interview for over an hour yesterday with 60 Minutes, and he hasn't exactly been so accessible to the American press. And I thought to myself, wow, he's giving the American press a lot of airtime. Coffee cups up, everybody. Welcome to my life. This is what I call the Chakkalo Report. Just I like to think a nuanced guy who gets updated on the headlines and is not afraid to share his opinions. Right? Nuance is not a dirty word. No allegiance to either side. So, good morning for those of you who have those coffee cups. Alrighty. It's worth noting. I don't. I watched the Netanyahu extended interview, but I intend on watching the Louisiana governor, who they also had on, because of what is very clear to me, or I would hope really clear to you guys, what I think about this whole redistricting, disenfranchisement of Americans happening nationwide. And from what little connections I have here in New York to Albany directly, well, it's, I guess not so little, but from whatever I'm hearing, there are murmurs of New York trying to do it themselves, but New York is entangled in some constitutional back and forth, state constitutional back and forth. It's not as clear cut as it is for other states, but if New York plans on doing it, I don't know. I guess I have to engage in my civil process here of making sure it doesn't happen. And without further ado, we hit 8:05. 8:05. We crank out the headlines. Let's rock and roll. Okay, so let's start with the news of the day. Trump rejecting Iran's response to a ceasefire proposal. Of course, there's reporting all over the place as to what was in that proposal. Trump calls this unacceptable. Iran says it will never bow as Trump rejects peace counteroffer. And then where did I read it? I read it in The Economist this morning, which I told you guys I'm a new subscriber to. That, here it is. Trump called Iran's response to America's proposal totally unacceptable and included a compensation for the war damage, recognition of Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state television said it is not clear whether the proposal mentioned Iran's stock of highly enriched uranium. Netanyahu said the war could not end until Iran relinquishes the material. Crude, the oil benchmark rose to about $105 a barrel. That's the Economist reporting. Let's break that down a little bit because I have opinions on basically every clause there. Compensation for war damage compensation for war damage. Let's start there. No, we don't pay you for starting a war when we are the more powerful party. That's the way it works. If you won the war and were negotiating conditions of surrender, maybe, but this is far from that case. And I'm gonna hit on Fareed Zakaria's commentary yesterday. It was perfectly said in the what's the word I'm looking for, parable of why isn't America's victory so obvious? They're the more powerful party by far. The reason is because Iran is fighting for their life. So there's this game of chicken going on, and this is Fareed talking here, where the U.S. is driving forward 100 miles an hour. The Iranians are driving towards the US 100 miles an hour, and someone's going to have to blink. But if the US keeps going forward and misses Iran or blinks first, they'll just have a minor problem on their hands and probably take less than 24 hours for the headlines to flip to something else. Iran, if they blink, they probably lose their lives, their regime, the past 50 years, whatever they've been building, terror proxies across the Middle East, keeping them in power. When they're fighting for their life, they're not going to give up and blink that easily. And this is an example of it. So he had a great commentary and parable on that, and I think it translates over into this. Like I said, compensation doesn't happen unless you're negotiating conditions of surrender, not ceasefire or victory. Second element, Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. This is going to be the biggest point of all, in my opinion. I've mentioned a couple of times here. I wrote a commentary for my business newsletter back in July when Israel started operations during the 12-day war for Iran, and I said the Strait of Hormuz is going to be the entire thing. Again, from a business point of view, all these months later, and it is. But sovereignty over the strait, I'm going to defer to Admiral Stavridis, who says absolutely not. This is an international strait. This is internationally run, and this is a non-starter. The fact that they're already using the strait is already, call it, internationally confusing. They can maybe say it was part of the battlefield, but they can't own it now. Sea above, South China Sea. That doesn't work. Okay, so that was owning the Strait of Hormuz. And it's not clear whether it mentioned the stock of highly enriched uranium. Okay. All right. I mean, my reaction from what I saw Benjamin Netanyahu interview last night, again, just an inclination. No one, I think, from just seeing Netanyahu's face, number one, I see a tired man. I see someone who's been prime minister for way too long and needs some level of immunity to just resign. I see it on his face. I mean, you look at his face from now and 10 years ago. That's not the age of right now. I think he's upper 70s. That's not the face of somebody who's determined to run for re-election and serve another 4 years. I mean, you got to give him a shovel to get out of his hole, and I think he just might. Perhaps he's going to negotiate a pardon with the Israeli president, but that's one thing I saw. Second thing I saw, I think he's accomplished a lot in Iran as far as Israeli interests, and doesn't have much more to bring back to Israel besides the uranium and nuclear material. He mentioned, so one of the questions yesterday were, what was your biggest objective or your biggest success? He said taking out 20 of the highest nuclear scientists in Iran during the 12-day war. Of course, they've accomplished more now given this war, but during the 12-day war, he took out a good ton of nuclear scientists, setting back their program. And he said it perfectly in that you can't take away the know-how, but you can always set them back. And that was how they did it. All of that to say, I did see a desire, and again, all intuition, all reading faces, and he's a lifetime professional, as if I know anything, but I don't. I did see a desire to go back in and to re-escalate. I did. I don't know if Trump has that, but when Trump is getting a deal like this, recognizing sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, compensation for war damages, and question mark on enriched uranium, I don't know if he'll have a choice. He can continue the blockade, but he may want to turn up the heat. how do you turn up the heat even more than the blockade currently is? I'm open to ideas. Let me know in the chat. I am skimming it as you guys are typing today, and as you know, I'll always read it and respond to it whenever I can. So let's proceed for a bit. Everybody, the world's been waiting for this. Xi Jinping and Trump will go ahead and meet. Trump is to arrive in China on May 14th. That's in 3 days from this stream, ladies and gentlemen. And it's funny because section, I think it's 122. Section 122 tariffs are the ones he claimed on the day after the Supreme Court ruled IEEPA unconstitutional, are now ruled invalid for the suing parties, not for anybody else. So for the parties brought a lawsuit to the International Trade Court, and they got their tariffs invalidated by Section 122. If that's the section that we're talking about here, again, I have to check on that. But the new ones, let's just call it the new tariffs, were ruled illegal. The question remains, through the appeals process, what will happen to the broader importers paying those tariffs? We know that Customs and Border Patrol have the infrastructure to refund now. And we know that the importers are cooperating with that refund process. Are we going to do this whole thing all over again? I guess we let it go through the court systems. And broadly speaking, what is happening to the presidential power to tariff unilaterally? When Congress passed these tariffs and largely deferred to the president to unilaterally impose them, I'm seeing a lot of people, or a lot of powers in this tariff authority be challenged and lessen, really. Is that what Congress intended for? Number one. Number two, is it the place of the Supreme Court to strike these down? So there's that. I was mentioning about the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and how Iran is being affected and how you turn up the heat. Well, Narendra Modi, India's prime minister, is actually asking his own citizens to carpool and to reduce non-essential travel. Almost 90% of oil and gas that transited the Strait of Hormuz last year is not hitting Asia. Several countries, this is The Economist again, including Sri Lanka and the Philippines, have mandated energy-saving policies. So there's that. So the broader world is definitely feeling it. We're feeling it at the pump, I'll tell you that much. But are we feeling it in terms of use less energy? Doesn't look like it. Alrighty. Let's see what else we got going on in this fantastic world we live in. And wow, nothing I want to bite on here. Oh, all right. I'll bite on this one. Pete Hegseth calls for Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona, to be investigated for a second time. Now he's going after Mark Kelly's public statements about classified briefings amid ongoing feud. Kelly on the Iran war. What are the American people getting out of this? Okay, so there's little to respond to here. And it also helps to know that Mark Kelly was on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan yesterday, and there's a transcript out for those of you who'd like to read rather than watch it on CBS News. This whole political prosecution thing that Trump loves doing to Tish James Comey, and I guess is Fani Willis part of it? I don't know, but she should be. Everybody else, not really. Just stop. I mean, I disagree with Mark Kelly's statements. What are American people's getting out of the Iran war? But what are the American people getting out of these political prosecutions? Yeah, Hegseth is not prosecuting, I guess, technically Mark Kelly, but he's calling for investigation into him, and I guess he wants a particular outcome. He's not really looking to find answers and find facts. So there's that obvious nuance to everything. Hegseth is calling for Mark Kelly to be investigated. We know that, and right, what are the American people getting out of this? Senator Kelly, I mean, I guess you'd know more than me. You'd know more than me. But what are the American people getting out of this? They're getting hopefully, an Iran that's under control. Uh, it's funny. Over the weekend with my wife, we sat down. We watched the show Tehran. Tehran is on Apple TV, and it's about Israeli Mossad agents operating in Iran. And the latest season had to do with nuclear inspections, and I think it was produced before the 12-day war, so it was crazy to see. And what are we getting out of this is an Iran with actual guardrails. The JCPOA was a less worse arrangement. The better arrangement is, I guess, stripping away the enriched uranium. But so in my opinion, getting the enriched uranium is the least worst option. Worse than that is a JCPOA kind of deal where you go into all of their known facilities with notice. And the worst of the worst is nothing. That's what Americans are getting out of this. The balance of power in the Middle East, what that would do to American interests, would decimate it. Would decimate it. Because then you have Saudi Arabia doing it. Then you have Saudi Arabia cozying up to Pakistan like you see them doing now. And I reported here, right? That's what Americans are getting out of this. Also, what Americans are getting out of this, Netanyahu last night said he wants to reduce the financial support of the United States to Israel to zero. To zero. Netanyahu very much knows the sentiment that's going on in this country about Israel, about the aid that it gets. And that to me was a big highlight of what he said. So that's what America is getting out of this. Less financial aid to Israel. He didn't say that about military. He said that about financial. Less financial aid to Israel, a more secure Middle East, American interests being represented in the Middle East, and winning. Sean Nichols, did I believe him when I said that? I did because he made a very clear distinction between financial and military. Military is still it is really a partnership. So if you go into, let's say, the Iron Dome, I forget which is which, but one owns the intellectual property and another owns the supply chain to the Iron Dome technology. So there's already vast partnership instead of just aid, and there's also the obvious fact that military aid is just more contribution of the American government to the military-industrial complex. It's just a fact. Just a fact. Alrighty. There's already an appeals court actually taking on Kelly v. Hegseth to punish Mark Kelly over video for illegal orders. Wow, interesting. I have to go through that headline. Let's see. I'm going to engage a little bit with the comments now, even though we're at 22. So let's see how it goes. And on a production note, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think, because for a long time at this point, I had a setup right here that you see me using right now, where I look straight at the camera and I get to see your comments. It's sort of like it is a teleprompter, but your comments are scrolling by it. So let me know if you like the fact that I'm looking straight into the camera, but I'm also reading your comments. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I'll get to them. Cheers, everybody. All right. Let's see what we're saying. Good morning. Good morning. YouTube's really got to make this so much easier to do. Okay. Robert and Nancy chit chatting. Or let's start with Macaroni talking to Kate. It was an experience, not number one on my list either. Best friend took my son to lunch a few weeks ago and loved this place. Grateful to share. Well, listen, I hope you're sharing about your Mother's Day. Happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers on this program. And everybody, all the mothers in your lives. How's that? All the mothers in your lives. We had a great day yesterday. We went to the park, spent the day with the kids, took some pictures, and visited all the moms in our lives. I have my wife and I have a grandma, so we visited them too. So that was a good day. What else do we got? Ham White, I suspect Netanyahu is scared straight that the U.S. reaches an agreement with Iran that leaves Israel hanging out on its own. Ham White, I wouldn't put it past Netanyahu to act alone. The question is, did Netanyahu get what he needed to out of the American army? I don't think that, say they want to go ahead and seize the enriched uranium themselves, it's going to be a hell of an operation. And I don't know if the IDF is capable of doing that. And I don't think that Netanyahu is down to do that. Set up like Stavridis said, set up a perimeter, protect the perimeter, excavate the enriched uranium that they know about, extract the uranium, and leave Iran. I mean, it doesn't sound pretty. Doesn't sound pretty. But if there are any smaller scale operations that Israel can do, I don't think Netanyahu would hesitate to do them on his own. Now, if he would defy Trump, I don't think he'll do that. But if Trump looks the other way, maybe. Let's see what happens when Trump goes to China, because China's going to have something to say. And there are some indications that Russia is either going to wind down the Ukraine war or maybe losing the Ukraine war. Who knows? Robert Berkshire. Yes, a few states have the state constitution issue. All I know is the New York state issue, because they've tried to pass referenda and amendments to the state constitution in regards to redistricting as far back as I think 2019 or 2020. And it's been litigated, and the state court of appeals, which is the highest court in the state, has ruled some elements of it unconstitutional, like the referendum to amend the constitution. It was weird, and Smirkanish even had a segment on it. I don't know what the latest on it is now. Worth keeping an eye on, though, especially for New York residents. Nancy Lawrence, Iran is jerking us around as they know we are politically vulnerable. Michael Smirkanish said it best himself. They know that their biggest asset is patience, something that us Americans just don't have. We don't. And it is their biggest weapon and asset. It is. Alrighty. Sean Nichols, but has the U.S. won the war? I mean, militarily, I think so. Rhetorically, no. I think they lost it. Rhetorically. Nancy Lawrence, they won't blink until after the midterms. Nancy, the midterms are over. I don't know why you think that there is such thing as after the midterms. Again, the only question is the Senate. That's really it. Nancy, Iran is waiting until the Dems get power in the House, as they'll have more leverage. That should tell you something. Are the Dems really rooting for Iran? That's a different story. Ham White, willpower versus technology, same as Ukraine's defense. It is always easier to defend. Existential threats compensation is required under international law. Doubt that will happen. Yeah, Ham White, there's a lot of things that are required under international law that really doesn't apply here. The reason why I say it doesn't apply is because no one ever follows it. I mean, something that I held since my undergraduate studies is, what does international law even mean if it doesn't have any teeth? I think it's useless. And mind you, I studied a lot of international law in college, and I thought to myself, what is this? This purely relies on people self-enforcing. And I mean, And then I was in college 2014 to 18, and this is the rise of Trump when less and less and less of conventional law or conventionalism was partaking on the real world stage. So, yeah, like I said, compensation, as you're accurately saying, is required under international law. But sure, uh, usually that happens in terms of surrender, and it also requires sort of an admission that your military actions were wrong, doesn't it? U.S. is not about to do that. Jamal, maritime law, Iran cannot have control over the Strait of Hormuz. Again, international law is what at this point, right? CKCJO, this is interesting. Going through old emails and saw how I almost went for a startup program in Israel, but pulled out when people rose again. BB due to the judges. A friend made it there, but it was what a stressful situation. Yeah, that was all pre-October 7th. To think the nation so divided was then so rocked. Let's see what else we got. Ham White, Trump needs to win before meeting with Xi. Otherwise, is open to attack from the Chinese on the Taiwan question. His only card is shipments of oil and other goods are cut off from the Gulf. China has the largest, I think you mean the largest reserve. Ah, yeah, you did. Largest reserves in the world. Let's see, because China has a few months until they have to start worrying about it. And Trump is in no rush, from what I could tell. He is in no rush. Here's something else I was thinking about. Technically, he's passed the War Powers Act 60-day threshold, but I mean, he's not actively fighting now. So when he hit May 1st, there was a ceasefire in place. What happens? So is he in violation of the War Powers Act now that there's a ceasefire in place? Is the actively fighting done? And is a new military action, would that restart the clock? There's something I'm thinking about. And it also plays into Ham's comment about blockading the strait and sort of choking China from getting Iranian oil. Nancy Lawrence, vengeance, isn't that what people want in a trial when someone murders a kin? Not quite sure. Not quite sure what you're talking about there. If you're talking about the Kelly case, that's definitely not right. Ham White, Kelly is an elected official. How do you gag a congressman? Do you really think that would be possible, Nancy? No, you cannot gag a congressman. In fact, I think they're immune from basically everything, as long as they're on the Congress floor. Nancy, Mark Kelly is getting too far left for me. Well, I'll tell you what, Kelly was somebody that I revered and championed, especially being a nuanced, middle of the road kind of guy. Until he stupidly proposed a bill that would get rid of what's called an SGO, something that was in the big, beautiful bill that promoted school choice. And we actually scored a major win in New York State for it. I will make a video about it at some point, but you guys can look up the bill yourself. I am fired up. I had that article in my bag for weeks trying to find the time to make a video about it. I am just not happy. I'm just not happy about that. It passed into law and he wants to repeal it as a bone to the teachers unions. And I can't have that pass. I hate that idea. Otherwise, like let's say when he was being vetted for VP by the Harris campaign, I was all for him. I liked Kelly. What else we got? All right, we'll take one more. Ham White. No and no again. WPA is not affected by ceasefire time. Oh, the War Powers Act is not affected by ceasefire time and will restart restart of military action is not a separate act. Ridiculous speculations by media talking heads. Will Trump ask for a new one? I don't know. Let's see. Will he ask for a new AUMF? What are you saying, Ham? Are you saying that Trump will ask for a new AUMF, or will he ask for a new AUMF? Let's see what you mean, and then we'll wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, please thumbs up if you can, subscribe below if you have not, and I will see you Wednesday. Let me know what you think of the production note, the fact that I was looking straight into the camera while reading the comments, and we'll go from there. So Ham White just responded. I'm saying that he will never ask for an AUMF. I guess. So what are you going to do? So what's Congress going to do? Just going to drag him into a potential impeachment? Like I said in day one, I'm sure that these will be the grounds of the Dems impeaching him once they get power in Congress. Yeah. Anyways, have a fabulous day, everybody, and make it the best because you won't get another chance to live it. Bye, everybody. ¿Qué pasa?